Hello and welcome. You're watching Beyond the Headline with me, Tamanna Inamdar. Today is a day that we journalists live for. A day when a tornado of news has hit from every corner. On a day like this, our task of curating what is most important and presenting it in an effective, simple manner becomes even tougher. So here's what's on the show today. First, we will talk about the Supreme Court order that has set up a 6-member panel to investigate the Adani saga. They have to submit their report in 2 months. Will this bring to an end, one way or the other, the controversy? Second, 3 election results from the northeastern states of Tripura, Nagaland and Meghalaya. The overarching theme, the BJP is now very much a dominant force in the political landscape of the northeast. The G20 foreign ministers meet also ended today, and as expected, there was no joint statement, no consensus from a grouping bitterly divided over the Ukraine-Russia war. And last but not least, I speak to one of the petitioners in the case that has led the Supreme Court to change dramatically how members of the Election Commission of India are selected. All of that coming up, but first, let's begin with the headlines. Saffron sun rises in the northeast. BJP retains power in Tripura and Nagaland. In Meghalaya, Chief Minister Conrad Sangma's NPP looks to join hands with the BJP. Prime Minister Modi says victory is a testament to BJP's ethos of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Supreme Court quashes present system of appointment of Election Commission members. A collegium comprising the PM, the Chief Justice of India and the Leader of Opposition will choose members till Parliament brings in a law. Supreme Court orders formation of a 5-member panel led by former Supreme Court judge to look into protecting investor interests is the fallout of the Adani-Hindenburg case. And no joint statement after the G20 foreign ministers meet in New Delhi as West Russia showdown splits G20 nations. Sushmita Sen reveals she suffered a heart attack, pens a note on Instagram, says angioplasty done, stent in place. I do have a big heart now. Since the 24th of Jan, investors in the Adani Group shares have lost about 97,000 crore rupees. Many of these are small retail investors. The Supreme Court has stepped into the Adani saga primarily to protect these investors. So what's the concern? It's actually twofold and conflicting in a sense. One is that short seller Hindenburg, who released a report on the 24th of Jan making serious allegations against the Adani Group, is responsible for this mega loss to Indian investors and must be investigated. The other is that the Adani Group did indeed possibly flout rules and SEBI, the regulator, did nothing. Hence, they are responsible for investor losses. Now, whatever may be the case, the Supreme Court today has ensured there are 2 levels of investigations on this. One by SEBI, whose job this is. They will have to, in 2 months, investigate if the Adani Group violated Rule 19A of Securities Contract Law, which says every listed company should have at least 25% public shareholding. They will also look at whether the group failed to disclose transactions with related parties or if they've indulged in stock price manipulation. On top of that, there is a 6-member committee, a 5-member actually, headed by a retired judge, featuring the who's who of the Indian financial sector. Nandan Nilekani, K.V. Kamath, Somashekar Sundaresan, O.P. Bhatt, among others, are in this grouping. They will be updated by SEBI on their investigation and will conduct their own probe and also give a report in 2 months, but in a sealed cover. Now, the question is this enough to calm investors in Adani stocks? Will this protect investors in the future from any such incident? And more importantly, will we have an answer in a time-bound manner? This is something Gautam Adani, chairperson of the Adani Group, also echoed when he tweeted that the Adani Group welcomes the order of the Honorable Supreme Court. It will bring finality in a time-bound manner. Truth will prevail. This is what he said. So can we hope for the truth to prevail? To speak on this, I'm joined now by Advocate Vishal Tiwari, who was one of the 4 petitioners in this case. Sriram Subramanian, founder and MD of Hindenburg Research Services, is with me on the show. They look at investor protection. Hemendra Hazari, independent research analyst, joining me today, as is Madhavan Narayanan, senior journalist. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us. Advocate Tiwari, let me begin with you. Are you satisfied with what the Supreme Court has done today? You did want an independent committee looking at this under a retired judge, isn't it?
See, we are not only satisfied, but we are very much grateful to the Supreme Court of India. Because for the first time, I think Supreme Court has intervened in this share market business or in this regulatory mechanism which governs the entire share market. And as my PL was concerned regarding the investors' interest, that in future if such kind of incidents again happens, then what is the safety of the investors? What is the safety of the shareholders who invest their money from their savings? So today also in its order, Supreme Court has clearly observed that at the first date of hearing itself, we raised this concern, and keeping in this mind that how to safeguard in future the money, the savings of the shareholders, and how to strengthen the present regulatory mechanism, what could be done. So Supreme Court has constituted today the expert committee.
Yes, we said all of that. Yes, Advocate Tiwari, I said all of that in my introduction. I told people what happened. I want to know your view as the petitioner. You think this will lead to a clear answer? Because this entire saga is filled with insinuations, accusations, counter-accusations, but investors have already lost their money. That money is not going to come back. So what really will be the outcome of this is the most important point, that we'll know what happened either way in 2 months.
See, in my view, outcome will be that some refined finding will come, and that finding will lead to some more reforms to strengthen the regulatory mechanism. It is right that investors have already lost the money.
Right.
Now, whether that money loss was caused due to some kind of dereliction of duties of the regulatory mechanism or due to some kind of wrong things done by any company, that will only come after the investigation of the expert committee. And if it comes that there was some kind of wrong, there was some kind of dereliction of duty, then I think obviously some action will be taken against them. But for the future, that is the main concern. What has happened today? See, we can cite an example that we faced recently a pandemic. So in that we also suffered a loss. But we have to prepare in future that if such situation arises again, then whether we will be fully competent to deal with that or not. So that is the main theme of this petition. And on that only, that order was passed today by formulating the committee. So I hope some positive outcome will be there definitely within the period of 2 months, and if some more time will be there, then that is the procedure. Committee may ask the extension for time. That is not an issue.
Of course.
But something positive will definitely come.
You know, Hemendra Hazari.
Something positive will definitely come.
Hemendra Hazari, all of this is being done from the prism of the retail investor, whose money, frankly, if they've lost it, it's gone. They have to wait for the vagaries of the stock market. I want to understand, what can this committee or SEBI do when they say that we want to avoid something like this in the future? The way the stock markets work, it is sensitive to news and information. There may be something like this in the future. Can you really control what happens in the open market? Should you control what happens in the open market?
The issue to me is very simple. The main issue is, were these entities based in Mauritius masquerading as, not related parties when they were really linked to promoters? To me, that is the very central issue, which everything flows from that. Because if they were, there's a straight violation of the minimum public holding. And then the issue will arise that it was not a question of adding something or augmenting regulation. The regulation is very much there today. It was a question of SEBI doing its job at the appropriate time. Now, 1.5 years is a very long time to have probed these allegations. So from a retail investor, from the market's perspective, it is very clear that SEBI has to find out whether this is accurate. if it is accurate that these were entities linked to the promoter, I expect, as a capital market analyst, that criminal action should follow, and there should be then a swift punishment. That is how the capital market, that is how capitalism works, that if you break the law, you will be punished, and you will be punished severely, especially for the kind of havoc that has been done today. But to arrive at this conclusion, SEBI must conduct an investigation rapidly and come out with the conclusion, because the market has very clearly given its verdict. The market has clearly, agreed with the Hindenburg's allegations. So the market has given its verdict. Now the capital market wants to know, why has SEBI taken so long? Now that at least the Supreme Court has rectified.
Yes.
But they want to see, what does SEBI have to do? Because it's not a question of augmenting. These are all very general comments.
No. So
you see, once...
1 minute. Hemendra, how do you see this additional committee on top of SEBI in a sense? If you go through the order, the Supreme Court says we're not trying to diminish, regulatory bodies in any case, etc. But how do you see the formation of this committee? Does it also, in a sense, say that we're not going to leave it just to SEBI? There is an additional layer. There's an additional layer of accountability with very well-respected and credible names on that committee. Does that give you some solace?
It does, because all this while, SEBI, which should have done his job, has not done his job, and the highest court of the land has recognized that. The very fact that the highest court of the land has to impose a committee on top of a regulator to see that it is getting its job done, I think undermines the credibility of the regulator. And it's a very severe undermining of the credibility of the regulator, which should not take place in any system. So this is a very severe, it tarnishes the credibility, the reputation of SEBI. Now we'll have to see whether this committee, which mind you has, as you said, eminent people, one thing you have to bear in mind that they all represent and they're all titans of corporate India. And corporate India historically likes to be, on the right side of the government. Therefore, one should not expect titans of India, of corporate India, to take decisions which may go against the government. That has been the history of corporate India as we have seen it. And therefore, I really don't see that although they are very eminent individuals, I really don't see them taking a strong stand.
No, but there are two judges on it as well.
They have to
Hemendra, there are two judges.
There
are two judges on it as well. There are two judges on that panel as well, apart from the titans of corporate India.
There are two judges, but the other members all are very mainstream. They're all from corporate India, barring those two judges. So we'll have to see now how the outcome comes in.
Okay.
Now, we have seen the outcome of the Pegasus committee, which sadly has been very disappointing.
Okay. Madhavan, we had the opportunity to speak when this entire situation first arose. And frankly, at the end of the day, because the story has taken so many twists and turns and angles, there's a political angle to it now in a very big way, questions of whether our regulatory systems are working, our regulators are in the thick of things, do they know what's happening? But I think the biggest angle, especially from the point of our viewers, is the Indian investor, who has now, especially after pandemic, come to the markets in large numbers and needs to know that their investments are safe. Safe in the sense, of course, equity doesn't give you any fixed returns, but that you can't be taken for a ride by lack of disclosure. The bottom line is that whatever happens in 2 months has to address that concern, isn't it?
Yeah, but Tamanna, much as I agree with you, the point is that we are actually, first let me comment on the panel, which is an excellent one because I personally know a couple of them. Of course, it could have done with a woman banker instead of OP, but perhaps maybe Shikha Sharma or Arundhati Bhattacharya, because the absence of a woman is glaring in this day and age. But more than that, I'm very worried about the terms of reference because disclosures basically keeps it down to SEBI-related issues as if this is just a super panel doing the job because SEBI is not doing its job well. Whereas actually the issues concerning this Adani, Hindenburg tangle are much more than disclosures. Disclosures are a critical minimum for corporate governance. I'll let Mr. Subramaniam from InGovern's speech on that. There is a valuation angle in which Nathan Anderson of Hindenburg has already won his game. There is also the corporate governance angle, which is not about illegality. It is all about just best practices and good practices. And then there are illegalities, potential illegalities surrounding what Hemendra Hazari spoke about on round tripping of money, Mauritius, in which the enforcement directorate or those agencies need to get in if needed. But the biggest elephant in the room is allegations of crony capitalism and the perceived closeness of the Adani Group to the ruling party based on various documented evidences on whether state-controlled institutions, including LIC and State Bank of India, have been giving any sweetheart deals to this group based on political influence or influence peddling, if you will. And therefore, this issue is not going to go away. Let me be very clear.
No. So let me put that into perspective. So some opposition party members today are saying we still want our JPC. We still want our JPC, and you know we don't. So what if the Supreme Court has got this expert panel, and SEBI will do his job, and the expert panel will, in a sense, have oversight. Though the Supreme Court has not explicitly said that, we still need a JPC. I want to understand, Madhavan, what will the JPC find that all of these people who know this failed will not?
Absolutely. I think good question. This is a question we need to address, especially in an election year. Key issues are whether public policy issues related to award of contract, because Mr. Adani's rise as a global billionaire and losing $100 billion and gaining in a matter of 2 years or 3 years is the biggest elephant in the global financial room. I'm not talking about India. $100 billion is not small money, even for billionaires, even for Elon Musk. And therefore, you have to look at it from the context of where did all the money come from? Why is there such a high evaluation? How is it that something that was done by the state for decades is suddenly given to one group? Whether there have been any
That's not the scope. That's not the scope entirely of this investigation, though.
Exactly.
That's
not
the scope of this investigation. That's a larger, issue.
You have to look at the fact that the terms of reference of the investigations, are they limited? That is a question that we need to ask.
Okay, Mr. Subramaniam, I want you to come in on that. Is that relevant to investor protection? Or is the ambit of this, or is the ambit of this Supreme Court order now limiting itself to investor protection? And the bigger questions, and some of them are very political and policy-oriented questions, are being left unanswered.
No, I would argue that neither of those two are in the ambit of the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court should not tread into regulatory and price action, etc. Tomorrow, some other stock will list and it will crash by 90%. Some petitioner will go and petition the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is not going to investigate. This entire Supreme Court order could have been summed up in one sentence, which is let SEBI do its job, right? Or we insist that SEBI do its job, like Hemendra ji said. And on the second hand, which is the political fallout. Political fallout is going to happen irrespective of this committee's report or even the JPC's finding. This is going to be an election thing. There is going to be this discussion even in campaigns. It's going to happen. So that is something that is outside the remit of Supreme Court again. So all I'm saying is that
what do you make of this expert committee on top of SEBI, Mr. Subramanian? Because the scope of allegations have included to SEBI's action or lack thereof. And now you have this expert committee. What is it telling us about SEBI's credibility today? And I'm asking that very honestly and openly. Investors want to know, what is it saying about SEBI?
Yeah, to that extent, definitely, yes. But in some cases, SEBI is not, it is outside of SEBI's jurisdiction to investigate offshore entities, for example. So there they may have to rely on other investigative agencies like DRI or other ED, etc., to investigate offshore Mauritian entities, etc., right? Because SEBI, during the KYC, know your client, they are not able to establish the credentials of those entities. So from that perspective, maybe other investigate. But all said and done, this entire constitution of this committee itself is judicial overreach, according to me. Because at the end of the day, they are also one of the four remits of this committee is to look at the price and the volatility of the past few weeks. How does it matter? The markets were not volatile. Only stocks of one group of was volatile.
No, you're
That's
right.
all. If
The
anything.
remit of the committee, the first line, and I am going to pull up that graphic again, you're right, is very generic. It says to prevent this kind of market volatility in the recent past. It doesn't talk specifically about the Hindenburg Adani incident. Now, market volatility is part and parcel of stock markets. You know that, it's not a fixed deposit. It's a different kind of an investment scenario. Madhavan, yes.
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand that the quality of regulation, Tamanna, is not just about one specific instance. It's about the country's economic climate. And to that extent, it affects the entire investor community and not just those who have already invested in Adani Group, because many of them, because of the presence of Adani companies in the indices, have lost their wealth. And many private mutual funds have not gone anywhere near the Adani stocks because the valuations were stratospheric. These are issues that concern overall regulation climate in the country, and to that extent, a very important factor in the economic stability and the financial incentives offered to a global investment community. And that is something we need to keep in mind. Please understand that Morgan Stanley has already put the Adani Group on watch. These are issues that concern the entire country and not necessarily
Do
those
they
who
really, Hemendra Hazari, is this about the entire Indian equity markets? And, I want you to come back to that 2-month sort of deadline and also pull up what Gautam Adani said. I mean, he's saying truth will prevail, but he's saying at least there will be finality. Is that also important that these things don't keep festering on? The question marks, the innuendos, it should be clear. If there's wrongdoing, we should know. We should know action be taken.
You're correct, because the market always likes certainty. Here there was no certainty when SEBI would complete its investigation. There was no timeline, no public statement. All we know is that it has been investigating it since 2021, which is an absurdly long time to investigate. Now, secondly, the question is about the market. Now, when we have such a very large entity which controls which is a market leader in several critical infrastructure sectors of the economy, and all these allegations are there, the market reacts to the allegations, and the regulator does not appear to be doing anything, then definitely I think all market participants are extremely concerned that you do not have a fair and impartial regulator, which affects the entire market. Now, today, if you see both the Indian media as well as the global media, you're not seeing anything favorable being said about the capital market regulator. And this is very obvious. I mean, even a novice can conclude that. So when it's concerned such a large entity in the market, it's part of your indices, which are tracked globally, then the regulator must act. Otherwise, if the regulator does not act, it's showing itself to be partisan, which definitely undermines the credibility of the entire market.
Yeah. Last word to Vishal Tiwari. He wanted to come in. Do you think much more needs to be answered beyond the scope of what the Supreme Court and this panel can do, Mr. Tiwari? Especially if the protection of Indian investors is at the core of it.
See, just now we all were discussing regarding the remit of committee and regarding the SEBI's role. So, after reading this entire order, it is very much clear that question mark comes upon the SEBI, because in present time SEBI was already there, but then also such incident took place. And Supreme Court concern regarding the constituting an expert committee, it itself shows that some more is required. Only present SEBI is not sufficient to safeguard or to save the money of the investors or promoters. Secondly, when we were talking just now, we were talking regarding the remit of the committees. Supreme Court has also framed that to investigate whether there has been regulatory failure in dealing with the LS contravention of laws pertaining to the securities market in relation to the Adani Group. So specifically the name of Adani Group or other companies, it has been added. So either you investigate the Hindenburg report or you investigate regarding the Adani Group.
Sab, dono karna
Both are the
humko.
same things because allegations leveled.
No, dono karna hai. Because you are
Allegations
one of
leveled
the
in the
four
Hindenburg
petitioners.
Group are
You are one of the four
Definitely.
petitioners. We have also listed
Yes.
out, and I said that in my introduction, that the remit is actually, in a sense, contradictory. Because one of the petitioners said that we want action against Hindenburg for putting out the report. They're seeing a conspiracy in that. Other petitioners are seeing a problem with the Adani Group's actions. It's kind of reflecting the divergence of views on this entire saga. We hope there is clarity from the Supreme Court at the end of the day. I like the fact that 2 months is the time limit. I'm out of time. I'm completely out of time. But thank you to all of you for joining us.